Well, this is segmented turning part 2 for Skip Deedon. This is a project I put together, and I wanted to videotape the various steps because I've had a lot of people ask me how do you glue all these little pieces together. So I wanted to go through the process. If you watched my part 1, you saw how we got this far. We made up all these rings, cut all these segments, and glued them all together. And now we're actually starting to put them in the lathe and start to build the vase that we're making. Basically, you take a ring, and this happens several times now. We take the ring, get a measurement, mark the piece on the lathe to see how much material we're going to remove, make sure that we leave enough material for the glue. We need to sand the face of it off so that we know it's perfectly smooth so we can accept the next layer that's going to be put on. After we built all those rings, we did sand one side totally smooth. And what I'm doing here is just taking some sandpaper and finishing the ring that we've already mounted on there. We'll continue doing this process as we move along. That way, as we're building the unit, or building the vase, or whatever your project is, the inside is finished as you turn. So you're never having to reach down inside and do any touch-up work or final work leaving yourself in a difficult position to work from. I took a class from Bill Candler, the guy that writes Segmented Project Planner. He wrote software that makes all of this math easy to do. You don't do anything except design your piece. The software does the rest of it. I'll put a link on here somewhere. What I've done there is I've taken a pencil and marked the face of that ring, and now I'm going to sand it off, and when all the pencil mark is gone, well, then I know that I've got a true flat surface and it's ready for the next ring. This project's a little bit bigger around than what I normally work with, and every now and then I run into where the tapered cones that I have that I started out with aren't quite big enough. So what I've done is I've taken some MDF and layered it up and mounted it to a faceplate and then tapered it, and that's what I'm going to use to center this next ring. I didn't get a very good video of doing this, but I think you'll be able to figure out what it is I'm doing just by watching. I usually dry fit things first just to see how they're going to look and see if I'm going to have any trouble getting it centered. Once I'm satisfied that's going to work, then I'm ready to put the glue on. Usually put a piece of paper on the lathe so I don't get so much glue spilled all over. Bill would love to tell you that I use too much glue on everything. I'm not disputing that. I've not had anything come apart yet. So we'll just kind of squeeze this in place, and then we're going to use that tapered cone to get it centered. It's very important to keep the project centered as you're building it. Using Bill's method with the tapered cones that he has available at his shop, it makes the project fairly easy to do. Once I've glued that on there, now I'm just taking another piece of MDF. This is just 3/4 MDF that I laminated together, and this one is flat, and I'm using that just to apply pressure to the glue joint, just to make sure that I've got a good tight fit. Now this is what the project looks like from the outside. You can see the very first layer we put on that's in the chuck, and then the next layer, and the next layer. And as we go, the piece is getting heavier and heavier, and about now I'm getting nervous that it's going to tear out of that chuck if my tool happens to grab. So what I'm going to do now, this is the feature ring I'm actually chiseling on. I'm going to get that chisel down to where it's smooth, and then I'm going to put a steady rest on there, and the steady rest will support the weight of the project while we're working on it. You can can see, I'm using all carbide insert tools. These are all tools I got from Easy Woodworking. They're great tools. I really love them. And because I live full-time in a motorhome and I only have access to a woodworking shop when I'm in Arizona where I spend my winters, I don't really have a way of hauling around a sharpening system. I've seen these big grinders with big wheels on them, and I'm sure they work great, but this is what works for me. I like the fact that if the tool does get a little bit of dull, I can just loosen up with a set screw and turn it 90 degrees, and I've got a brand new tool ready to work. The tools are extremely sharp and they stay that way. This is the only tool I have that is not carbide. This is a big scraper. Bill had one like this. He had several, but I only purchased this one. But once I'm ready to do the final finish work, this tool does work very well at giving me a nice finish. Now that that's nice and round, we're going to put the steady rest on the lathe and get it mounted up. This just takes just a little bit of finesse, futzing around, getting it in just the right position. I want to make sure that the wheels are going to contact the piece where I've already turned it round. Once I'm satisfied that that's where they're going to be and that's where I want them, then I'm going to just tighten that plate. It just locks itself right down onto the lathe. I have no idea when my hair turned gray. I don't know why that happened. Got the piece on there now. I'm going to take each one of these arms with the wheel on it. These are just like rollerblade wheels. I'm sure you could make your own. I was just too lazy to do it. I've seen some homemade ones that work just as well as this one. This one is made by a company called Carter, I think, but I'm not even sure if I remember that. Once I got them tightened on there, I take the wheels and give them a little spin, make sure I get good contact, and I'm going to turn the lathe on and see if it runs true. You can tell I'm not real sure of myself because I kind of back up a little bit just to make sure something's not going to fly out of there. Once I'm satisfied, I'm ready to start working again. You can see now that the steady rest is in place and it's doing the majority of the work of supporting this piece on the outside. Here I'm just taking a measurement to see how thick the material is where I've already chiseled it down just to make sure that I haven't gone too far somewhere. I'm going to finish chiseling the inside of this. That's actually the Easy Woodworking tool. That's their finishing tool right there. I use a roughing tool and the finishing tool just about all the time. And then I'll do my final finish with that scraper. As I have with all the other layers, all I'm really doing here is getting this layer to line up and be even with the layer underneath it. And here I'm taking that scraper and taking my final cut here, just smoothing it off to the layers below it. I don't have a sharpening system, but we do have a vertical sander here, and I just put the table at 30 degrees and run that back and forth on that belt, and it keeps it nice and sharp. It cuts nice, but it does dull much quicker than the carbide does. Well, we're ready for the next ring. You can see they're starting to get smaller now. I've glued that one on. I've already centered it up with the cone and I'm gluing it on, and all I'm doing now is applying some pressure with that big flat disc. let that sit, and then once the glue is dry, we'll be ready to work. Well, I can see by the sunlight that this piece sat overnight. I can see the steam from my coffee in the background there somewhere. So like we have with all the other layers, we're going to chisel this off, get it almost smooth. We'll do the final smoothing with the sandpaper. We're going to make a mark and see where the next ring is going to glue up. Make sure we don't cut too far. Now we'll start removing the material from the inside. Using the roughing tool here again, just starting to cut the inside diameter down to make it match up with that feature ring that we already glued on there. Each layer will get smaller now, and pretty soon we'll have to use a hollowing tool, and they make all different varieties of those, but I'm also using the Izzy woodworking tools for my hollowing tools, and they work great. You can use the straight tools for almost everything I do, but some people that work with real tight radius have to have hollowing tools. Just getting ready to position the next ring. I've already faced that off. I've got it in the tapered cone right now, so I know it's centered. I've had the glue on there for a minute or so. I just need to leave it on long enough that it doesn't slide or move around when I remove the pressure. Too much glue. So I'm just going to turn this tapered cone around now and use the flat side as a press. And then I'll let that glue joint dry up, and I'll be ready to tool it. You can see we've added some more layers. The process just continues. Every time we add a layer, we do exactly the same thing. We true the face off, get the inside diameter to the diameter we want, and then pare the inside into the layer below it. I think we got one more layer to put on here yet. Getting a little shaky here. There's that hollowing tool I was referring to. It does a great job of getting to the inside where you can't reach. I guess I missed the earthquake. Or maybe I should just say make a note to self, don't mount the camera on the lathe. Well, the last layer is on now, and we're doing the same thing we've done before. We've used a tapered cone, a different size cone to keep it centered. And now we're going to turn that around, and we're going to get a flat cone on there and put some squeeze on it. I've done all that. Now I'm just going to face this off. I've got to open up the diameter. I made that ring a lot thicker than it needed to be, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. I'm all done with the inside of this piece. I'm just doing the final sanding. I've sanded every piece that has been built, so I don't have to reach way in there. I don't have a camera to go down inside here, but if I did, I think you'd see that it's all very smooth. Looks nice. Just going to face it off with the sanding board, and then we'll be ready to work the outside down. Should have taken a picture of what that outside looked like, but I think you know it's all 12-sided pieces there. You can see now, I'm going to let this speed up and go, but I've removed the steady rest. I don't need that anymore. I'm using that cone to support the piece. It's running on a live center there. You just chisel the outside to the shape you want and get things smoothed out. Then you go through your sandpaper grits to get the finish that you'd like to have on it. Any number of ways you can finish it. You can use shellac, you can use lacquer, you can use wax, whatever you like. For this particular piece I chose wax. I don't have any on there yet. I just picked the camera up just to let you see what the piece looks like while it's in the lathe after I tooled it down. I like using a friction wax. It's very quick, gives you a very nice smooth finish. This is the finished product with the wax on it. You can see it came out nice and shiny and smooth. It's a very durable friction wax. Friction wax just means that you put the wax on and you buff it with a cloth. If you leave it in the lathe, you let the lathe do the work, and you just have to get it warm enough for the wax to kind of melt into the surface of the wood, and you're all done. Looking forward to working on my next piece. I like segment and turning because there's just no limit to any kind of design. They can be as plain or as fancy as you want them to be. So that's it. That's all from my side. Hope this explains, my friends, how I make these pieces, and we'll see you next time.